The whole city searched for the billionaire's missing mother, but only a homeless little girl knew where she really was. She screamed the truth to everyone, but no one believed her until she opened her tiny hand and revealed the one thing that changed everything. But before we get started, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from today? Rowan Gray's face was everywhere, on billboards, on phone screens, on the big LED board in the middle of the city. But this time it wasn't about his companies or his money. It was about his mother. Missing, Helen Gray, last seen leaving her home 2 nights ago. The words flashed again and again. A reward, a hotline, a promise that they would not stop searching. People whispered her name in markets, in buses, in crowded streets. Some prayed, some gossiped, some just stared at the screens and shook their heads. But in all that noise, no one looked at the tiny girl sitting under a broken bus stop, hugging her knees to her chest. Her name was Lena. She was 7 years old, barefoot, her dark skin marked with little scars from the streets, her hair tied back with a piece of dirty blue ribbon she found in the trash. The city was afraid. Lena was used to fear. She had lived on the streets long enough to know what danger smelt like, what hunger felt like, what it meant when policemen told her to move along or shopkeepers waved their hands and said, "Go away, little beggar, don't stand here." That day, the air was heavy. Clouds gathered above the tall buildings like a warning. The wind picked up dust and wrappers and threw them into people's faces. Lena watched crowds hurry past her, all rushing home before the storm came. On the screen across the road, Rowan stood in front of cameras, his eyes red and tired. "Please," he said, voice shaking, "if anyone has seen my mother Helen Gray, call the number. Any clue, anything at all. Please." Next to him stood a woman with dark hair in a simple white dress. The news ticker said her name. Mira Lane, Rowan Gray's fiancée. Mira held up a hand and showed a little shining pendant, half of a silver heart on a chain. "This is the necklace Rowan gave his mother," she explained. "She wears the other half. If you see it, please report immediately." Lena didn't hear all the words, but she saw the face. Helen Gray. Soft eyes, kind smile, a small line near her mouth like she laughed a lot. Lena stared at the picture longer than she meant to. The woman looked like the kind of person who said thank you to waiters and bent down to talk to children instead of looking over them. Then the screen changed to more news. Cars rushed by. People rushed by. The first drop of rain landed on Lena's cheek. By the time she reached the edge of the city, the storm had already started. Thunder rolled like heavy stones above her head. Rain crashed down in thick, angry sheets. Lena ran, clutching the small plastic bag that held her treasures. 2 empty cans, a broken toy car, and half a stale bread roll a baker had thrown away. Her usual shelter under the bus stop was already filling with water. She needed somewhere else, somewhere the wind didn't bite so hard, where the rain didn't feel like needles on her skin. She knew a place. The dump. Most people stayed away from the old industrial dump. It was ugly and dangerous, full of broken machines, twisted metal, and piles of trash. But between the rusted containers and stacked junk, there were a few spots where the rain couldn't reach. Lena's small feet slapped against the wet pavement as she ran. Mud sucked at her toes, stones cut her heels, but she kept going, teeth clenched, eyes squinting against the rain. She slipped under a bent metal gate and into the dump. The smell hit her first. Old food, smoke, oil, and something she never wanted to name. But she was used to it. She pushed deeper in, her thin shoulders shaking. Thunder screamed overhead. A flash of lightning turned all the metal around her white for a second, then gray again. She ducked behind a stack of wooden pallets and half-collapsed machines and huddled underneath a slanted metal sheet. It wasn't comfortable. The ground was cold and damp. The wind still slipped through the cracks. But at least the rain didn't fall directly on her head. She was about to curl up and close her eyes when she heard it. A sound, very soft, very far. A weak, broken voice carried in the wind. Rowan. Lena froze. She thought maybe it was just the storm playing tricks on her. Wind often made strange noises in the dump, but then she heard it again. Rowan. My son. The voice trembled, thin as a thread. Lena's heart started pounding. No one usually came here during a storm. No one wanted to be near this place when the sky was angry. But that voice, it sounded scared. It sounded alone. She crawled out from under the metal sheet, her small hands slipping on the wet ground. The rain was still hard, but not as heavy between the piles of junk. Hello? She called, her voice almost swallowed by thunder. Is someone there? She followed the sound. Her bare feet slipped on mud. Broken glass bit into her soles, but she barely felt it now. The voice came from near the back, where big rusted containers leaned like sleeping giants. Please. Rowan. Lena turned a corner and stopped. There, on the ground beside a dented green container, lay an older woman. Her hair was soaked and tangled, her clothes torn and covered in mud. One of her sleeves was ripped. Blood trickled slowly from a cut on her forehead. Her lips were pale. Her fingers clutched at the air like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there. And around her neck, tangled half under her collar, Lena saw it. A broken chain with half of a silver heart hanging from it. Lena's breath caught. She knew that face, the soft eyes, the line near the mouth, the same woman from the screen. Helen, Lena whispered without meaning to. You're the missing lady. The woman's eyelids fluttered. Rowan, he must be so worried, she murmured. I can't get up. Her voice faded into a shaky cough. Lena dropped her plastic bag and ran to her, kneeling beside her in the mud. I'm here, Lena said, even though she was shaking too. I'm here, miss. Don't be scared. The woman turned her head slowly. Her eyes tried to focus on Lena's small face. You're just a child, she whispered. So are you someone's mom, Lena answered, a strange bravery waking up inside her. I saw you on the screen. They're looking for you. Your son, Rowan. Helen's eyes filled with tears. My boy. What happened? Lena asked softly. Helen swallowed with effort. A man. He took my bag, pushed me down. I hit my head, tried to walk. Everything was spinning. It was raining so hard. My phone. Broken. I walked and walked. Ended up here. Her teeth chattered. Her hands shook. Lena looked around. There was no one else. No lights. No other voices. Just trash, metal, and storm. No one comes here in the rain, she thought. No one but me. Her chest ached. I'm cold, Helen whispered. So cold. Lena only had one thing, a small scarf. It was old and thin, but it was hers. She'd found it weeks ago and used it as a blanket at night, wrapping it around her shoulders when the wind blew too hard. Her fingers trembled, but she pulled it from around her neck and gently placed it over Helen's chest and arms. You can use mine, she said. I don't mind. Helen's eyes glistened. You're very kind. The rain kept pounding around them. Thunder rolled again. The woman coughed, her body shivering harder. Lena looked toward the city. She knew the police were out there somewhere. Search teams, important people with cars and phones and warm clothes. But none of them were here. If I leave her, she thought, what if she stops breathing? What if she dies alone in the trash? Her throat tightened. She sat beside Helen, pressed her small body against the older woman to share whatever warmth she had, and wrapped an arm around her as far as it could go. I'll stay, Lena whispered. I'll stay with you. You're not alone. Hours passed. The storm finally softened, turning into a cold, steady drizzle. Lena's clothes were soaked. Her fingers felt numb. Her feet hurt, but she stayed. Sometimes Helen spoke nonsense, half dreaming, saying her son's name, apologizing for being late for dinner, begging him not to worry. Sometimes she was completely still, and Lena would panic and place her small hand near Helen's mouth just to feel a weak breath. "Please don't die," Lena whispered again and again. "Please don't die." When the sky began to turn from black to gray, Lena's head drooped with sleep, but she forced herself to stay awake. The morning light slowly crept into the dump. Lena looked at Helen's face. Her lips were even paler now. Her breathing was slower. Her skin felt too cold, even under the scarf. "I need to get help," Lena muttered, her voice shaking. "If I don't, she'll... Her eyes filled with tears. Carefully, she checked around Helen's neck. The half-heart necklace was still there, but the chain was broken. On the ground beside her hand lay a small silver piece, the loose part of the chain, attached to the clasp and a tiny charm. Lena picked it up and closed her fist around it. She didn't have money. She didn't have shoes. She didn't have anyone. But she had this, something that belonged to Helen Gray, something the whole world knew. She stood up on numb legs, swaying for a second. "I'll come back," she whispered in Helen's ear. "I promise. I'll find your son. I'll show him this. I'll bring him to you." For a moment, she thought she saw the older woman's eyelids twitch. It was enough. Lena turned and ran. Out of the dump, past the twisted metal, through the muddy path, onto the city streets. Her bare feet slapped against the ground, leaving little red marks behind. Broken glass cut her toes, stones dug into her heels. People shouted when she bumped into them, but she didn't stop. "Rowan!" she cried as she ran. "I have to find Rowan!" She didn't know where he was, but she knew where his posters were, where the big screen was, where the cameras had been yesterday. She headed toward the city center, her lungs burning, her throat raw, her tiny fist still gripping the broken silver piece. When she turned the last corner, she almost crashed into a black car and a crowd of people. And there he was. Rowan Gray, taller than she imagined, eyes darker than on the screen, standing with Mira and a small group of guards, giving orders, talking to officers, pleading with people. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She gathered every bit of air left in her lungs and screamed with everything she had. "Your mother is alive! I saw her near the dump!" Rowan spun so fast the people around him stepped back. His eyes, swollen from 2 sleepless nights, locked onto the tiny girl standing in the street. Lena looked even smaller in the daylight, mud on her legs, hair dripping, scarf missing, feet cut and bleeding. Her chest heaved with each breath as she tried to force out more words. "She's alive," she cried again, voice cracking. "Your mother! She's alive, sir!" Everyone stared. A few people whispered. A guard stepped forward, frowning. "Sir," he said softly, "she's one of the street kids. They've been making up stories since the reward." "I'm not lying!" Lena screamed, her voice breaking so hard it sounded painful. "She's cold. She's hurt. She can't move. She was calling your name." Rowan's jaw clenched. Exhaustion made his hands shake. He had chased dozens of false leads, cruel jokes, fake sightings, people trying to earn money off his grief. And now this? A little child in torn clothes, barefoot, crying. "Please," Lena whispered, stepping closer. "I stayed with her. All night." Mira put a hand on Rowan's arm. "Rowan, look at her, she's shaking." But Rowan's chest was tight, too tight. He had reached the edge of hope and terror. He shook his head, voice sharp. "No more lies, I can't. Please, no more." His voice cracked on the last words. Lena's lips trembled. She reached into her hand, the hand she hadn't opened once since she left the dump. "I'm not lying," she whispered again. She slowly uncurled her fingers. And there, resting in her dirty palm, was a broken silver chain with a heart-shaped charm, its edges jagged where it had snapped. Mira gasped so loudly people turned. "That's Helen's," she breathed. "Rowan, that's hers. I know it. I cleaned that necklace last week. Look, the mark on the side, that's real." Rowan's breath hitched. He stepped forward, grabbing the charm with trembling fingers. He knew it instantly. The tiny scratch near the clasp from when he was a teenager. The small engraving on the inside, HG. his mother's initials. His chest collapsed. "How did you get this?" he whispered. Lena stared up at him with huge, tear-filled eyes. "She dropped it," she whispered, "when she fell. Please, sir, I didn't steal it. I picked it up so I could show you, so you'd believe me. She's still there in the dump. Her voice broke completely, and her body shook with a sob she was trying hard to swallow. "I promised her I'd bring you." Everything inside Rowan shattered. He bent down suddenly and held her shoulders, not angrily, desperately. "Where?" he breathed. "Tell me exactly where." Lena pointed with a trembling hand. "Behind the big green container in the old industrial dump, past the broken gate. You have to hurry." Mira squeezed Rowan's arm. "We go now." Rowan didn't waste a single second. He lifted Lena into his arms before she could protest, her tiny frame light as a feather. "Show me the way," he said, voice trembling. Lena nodded fast, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I can. I remember everything. I didn't sleep. I was too scared she would stop breathing." Rowan swallowed hard as he carried her toward the car, running more than walking. His guards followed, confused but obedient. People watched from the sidewalks with wide eyes, whispering as the billionaire ran through the streets, holding a muddy, barefoot child who looked like she'd come from nowhere. When they reached the car, Rowan didn't put Lena in the back. He held her in the front seat with him, keeping one hand on her shoulder as though afraid she'd vanish. "Tell me where to turn," he said, voice cracking. Lena's finger shook as she pointed. "This way, past the bridge, then the small road on the right, the one nobody drives on." As the cars sped through rough streets, Lena kept glancing at Rowan's face. He didn't look angry now. He looked broken, scared, hopeful, terrified. "Why didn't you tell the police?" he asked quietly, not accusing, just confused. Lena looked down at her hands. "I did," she whispered. "Last night. And this morning too." Rowan waited. "They told me to move," she said softly. "Said kids like me lie. Said they didn't have time." The words hit him harder than a punch. Mira closed her eyes, shaking her head. "Oh, sweetheart." "And the shop lady," Lena added in a tiny voice. "She said I was making stories for money, but I wasn't. I wasn't." She covered her face with her hands, trying not to cry again. Rowan gently pulled her hands away. "I believe you now." Her lower lip trembled. "I didn't want her to die alone." The car slowed. The smooth roads disappeared, replaced by rough, broken ground. Old metal fences appeared on both sides. The dump loomed ahead like a dark, forgotten world. "That's it," Lena pointed urgently. "The gate, the broken one." Rowan didn't wait for the car to stop completely. He jumped out, lifting Lena with him. Mira rushed behind them. The air smelled different here, like rust, oil, and rotten things the city tried to forget. The wind was colder. Metal creaked in the distance. Lena squirmed out of Rowan's arms and ran ahead barefoot, ignoring the pain from debris cutting her feet. "This way! Hurry!" Rowan and Mira followed her between towering piles of trash, abandoned machines, and rusted containers. Every second felt like a knife twisting deeper into Rowan's chest. "What if I'm too late?" he whispered. "You're not," Mira said firmly. "Keep going." Lena stumbled once, caught herself, and kept running. She was shaking, Lena cried. Her lips were blue. Her eyes kept closing. "I stayed all night. I tried to keep her warm. I tried. I really tried." "You did more than anyone," Mira said through tears. They rounded the final corner. Lena stopped. She pointed with a trembling hand, voice barely more than a breath. She's there." Rowan moved past her so fast the wind lifted dust behind him, and then he saw her. His mother, collapsed on her side, half covered by Lena's tiny scarf. Her hair matted, her hands scraped, her face pale as morning frost. Her chest rose only slightly, so little Rowan almost didn't see it. His knees hit the ground before he even realized he'd fallen. "Mom," he choked out. "Mom." He touched her face with shaking hands. She didn't wake, but she breathed, a small, fragile breath. Rowan broke into a sound that was half a sob, half a prayer he didn't know he still remembered. Mira fell beside him, covering her mouth. Lena stood a few feet back, hugging herself, terrified to come closer. Rowan turned toward her with tears streaming down his cheeks. "How long?" he managed. "Since last night," Lena whispered. "She kept calling your name. I stayed with her so she wouldn't be alone." Rowan's voice cracked completely. "You saved her." "No," Lena said, shaking her head. "I just stayed. I didn't know what else to do." "You saved her," Rowan repeated, louder this time, raw emotion filling every word. "If you hadn't stayed, she wouldn't be alive." His hands shook as he lifted his mother gently into his arms. Mira was already calling the ambulance, her voice frantic. Lena watched, terrified, exhausted, overwhelmed, unsure if she was supposed to stay or run. The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance. Rowan turned to her again, breathing hard, eyes shining with gratitude and something even deeper. "Don't go," he said softly. Lena swallowed. I don't belong here," she whispered. "Yes," Rowan said, stepping toward her. "You do now." He held out his hand. She stared at it. Then, slowly, with shaking fingers, she took it. Rowan didn't let go of Lena's hand, not even for a moment, not when the ambulance arrived, not when the medics rushed Helen onto a stretcher, not when the siren wailed through the cold morning air. Lena flinched at the loud noise, but Rowan squeezed her hand gently. "You're coming with us," he said, voice rough but warm. She nodded, though her legs trembled. Part of her still believed someone would yell at her to leave, that someone would say she didn't belong, that this moment, this right to sit in the ambulance next to the woman she saved, would be snatched away at the last second. But no one pushed her away. A medic even lifted her inside carefully, wrapping a blanket around her small shoulders when he noticed her shivering. Lena sat on the bench, the blanket swallowing her tiny frame, while Rowan held his mother's hand on the stretcher. Helen lay motionless, oxygen mask pressed to her face, her chest rising and falling slowly. Too slowly. Lena stared at her through the fog of her own breath. "Will she make it?" she whispered. A medic adjusted the IV line. "She's fighting. She needs warmth, fluids, rest. You kept her alive longer than anyone expected." Lena blinked in surprise. I did?" "Yes," Rowan said softly, turning to her with eyes glistening again. "You did." The ambulance doors shut. They sped forward. The world outside became a blur of gray and passing buildings. Every bump made Helen shift, and every shift made Rowan's heart twist. Lena held onto the blanket tighter, feeling the cold metal beneath her bare feet. She hadn't realized how numb they were until they began to tingle with warmth. "Rowan," she whispered. He looked at her. "I only found her because I had nowhere to sleep," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to be there. I just didn't have anywhere else." His expression softened in a way she had never seen before, a mix of heartbreak and anger, not at her, but at the world that let a little girl sleep near a dump. "You should never have had to live like that," he whispered. Lena shrugged slightly. "It's normal. It shouldn't be." For the first time in her life, someone said that. Someone important. Someone who wasn't tossing her away like trash. She looked down at her dirty knees. "Do you think she'll want to see me? When she wakes up?" Rowan reached over and gently touched the blue ribbon in her hair, tied crookedly but carefully. "She'll want to thank the girl who kept her alive," he said. "She'll want to know your name." Lena's lips quivered. She wiped them quickly. "It's Lena." He smiled softly. "Lena, that's a beautiful name." Her heart warmed, like a tiny candle flickering after years of darkness. The ambulance slowed. The hospital entrance came into view. Nurses rushed out as soon as the doors opened. Lights flashed, voices echoed. "Hypothermic. Pulse weak. Get her inside." Rowan followed as they pushed Helen through the hallway. Lena tried to keep up, but the blanket tangled around her legs. Mira swooped in, lifting Lena into her arms before she fell. "It's okay, sweetheart," Mira whispered. "You're safe." They entered a waiting room with bright lights and soft chairs. Everything smelled like clean floors and medicine. To Lena, it smelled like another world. Rows of people watched Rowan pace back and forth, his hands locked together as if prayer lived inside his fingers. When the doors finally opened and a doctor stepped out, Rowan almost ran to him. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Weak, but stable. She needs warmth, fluids, and rest, but she's responding." Rowan's breath left him in a single shudder. His knees nearly gave out and Mira grabbed his arm. Can we see her?" Rowan asked. "In a few minutes. She's waking slowly." Rowan wiped his face with both hands, trying to breathe. Behind him, Lena sat on a chair with her legs dangling, the blanket wrapped around her like a cocoon. She stared at the floor, unsure if she was still allowed to stay. Then, Rowan crouched in front of her. "Lena," he said softly, "you want to see her too, right?" Her eyes widened. Can I?" "Of course you can." Her breath caught as she nodded, her small fingers twisting the blanket anxiously. A nurse led them to a quiet room. The beeping of machines filled the silence. Helen lay on the bed, her face pale but peaceful, her hair brushed back gently. Her half-heart necklace rested on her chest, the broken chain fixed by a doctor with tape. Rowan walked to the bed slowly. "Mom," he whispered. Helen's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, Lena thought she wouldn't wake. Then, very slowly, Helen's eyes opened. She blinked, squinting at the bright lights, her gaze wandering until it found Rowan. "My boy," she breathed. Rowan's cry broke free. He leaned over her, gripping her hand, his forehead touching her fingers. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're okay now." Helen smiled weakly. "You found me." "No," Rowan said, voice shaking. "She did." Helen's eyes moved past him, to Lena. The little girl stiffened, clutching the blanket as if it might hide her. Helen stared at her, confused for a moment, then understanding slowly lit her tired eyes. "You," she whispered, "you stayed with me." Lena nodded, her voice tiny. "I didn't want you to be alone." Helen lifted a trembling hand. Mira gently guided Lena closer. She stepped forward shyly, her bare feet silent on the floor. Helen touched her cheek with warm fingers. "You saved my life, little one," she whispered. Lena's throat tightened. "I tried. I stayed all night. I was scared." Helen brushed a tear from Lena's cheek. "You were braver than anyone." Lena's lip trembled. I found your necklace. I thought it was important." "It is," Helen smiled gently. "And so are you." Lena's breath hitched. No one had ever said that to her, not once. Later, after nurses asked them to let Helen rest, Rowan and Mira sat with Lena in a small lounge. Someone brought her warm socks and soft slippers. Someone else brought her a cup of hot chocolate that steamed in her hands. She sipped it slowly, as if it might disappear if she drank too fast. "Lena," Mira began gently, "do you have someone we can call? Family? Anyone?" Lena shook her head. "It's just me." "How long have you been alone?" Rowan asked. "A long time," she whispered. "After my grandma. After she—" Her voice faded. "I didn't want to go to the places they send kids. I ran away. I sleep wherever I can. I didn't want to bother anyone." Rowan exchanged a look with Mira, a deep, heavy look filled with unspoken words. He turned back to Lena. "Would you," he said slowly, carefully, as if the wrong tone might scare her, "like to stay with us? Not forever, only until we figure things out, a warm bed, food, safety." Lena froze. "Stay. With you?" "If you want," Rowan said. "Only if you want." Her eyes filled instantly. "But I'm just me." Mira took her tiny hand gently. "And that's exactly who we want." Lena burst into tears, loud, shaking sobs she had been holding inside for years. Mira wrapped her arms around her, rocking her softly. Rowan rested a gentle hand on her back. Hours later, when they finally brought her back to see Helen again, The older woman pressed something into Lena's palm. It was the fixed chain and the silver half-heart. For bravery, Helen whispered. Lena clutched it tight. The world outside was cold, but inside this room, for the first time in her life, Lena wasn't alone. Not anymore.
If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story.